Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mean Green Gridiron podcast. I am your host, Billy Sierra, and I am joined once again by, you may know him as the man behind the fake Jerry Jones on the ticket, Carter. Carter, how's it going?
There it is. It's going good. It's going good. We are back in the saddle after missing a week. Schedules got conflicted. I think we were both a little busy.
Yeah,
Maybe we
we
were
were
both
not we were not too
subconsciously trying to
depressed.
avoid talking about this. No, but maybe subconsciously.
Yeah,
Maybe we were both kind of like, yeah, let's skip this one. But no, I'm doing good. So we're back in the win column, and life is good. Watching
yeah,
watching Luka play basketball for the Lakers right now sucks, but you know what? We're getting through it. So
yeah. No, it's always nice to have basketball and hockey going on too, and World Series. It's football season cranking into high gear. So yeah, it's a good sports time of the year. This always used to be my favorite time of year because I am a tax accountant, and October 15th is our last big deadline of the year. That's why I was busy last week, and then after that, it's like all the sports. So that's it's a nice little light at the end of the
it's
tunnel
the best
for
month of the
me.
year.
Oh yeah, I would
Best
say
month of the year.
I think like probably like this month, like not October, not November, but like the next like 30 days is really solid. Like that second half, like
Yeah.
into Thanksgiving. But anyways, so yeah, we'll touch over the South Florida game since we missed podcast last week. But um, obviously the lead there is that we had a great attendance, and while we lost the game, it was a really cool environment, and it was just too much snowballing downhill too fast. But what otherwise was a really good game, was looking really good as far as at least us, being competitive, looking like we belonged on that national stage. Um,
Mhm.
and just, I think that I was listening to the Dave Campbell college football podcast that they have, and they're talking about how, a couple things. One, Mike Craven, the senior writer for Dave Campbell, said that he was just walking on the sideline, and he was just looking at the South Florida players, thinking like this is like a P4 team in terms of like the eyeball test,
Yeah.
and like the type of athletes that they have walking on their sideline that most G5 teams just don't have, especially in this NIL portal era. And then two, I think whenever we scored the first touchdown of the game, Drew Messamaker ran one in. He was so juiced up, and the crowd was going so
Hmm.
crazy, and I almost felt like, man, like I've never seen that level of emotion from him, and I felt like it was almost kind of like not a good thing in my opinion. When I saw that, I was like, man, like he's super juiced. Like I'm almost scared that he's like a little too amped up right now, and obviously he threw he threw the only three picks he's thrown all season, all in one game. But what were some of your impressions of that game? Just takeaways.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, that's a really good team on that sideline. I know our fans don't have the highest regard for South Florida fans on Twitter, or
Yeah,
um, they can be a little pesky. But you got to give credit where it's due. They are a really good football team.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I agree as far as the hype goes. I mean, the crowd was awesome. The environment was amazing. Um, I think you got to consider that this was Drew and Caleb Hawkins, who are essentially 1A, 1B, the main catalysts of our team as
yeah.
far as the offense goes, for sure.
Right.
This was their first time in the spotlight. I know Drew had the bowl game last year, but didn't really count. It was a game with an interim coach, and or not interim coach, interim players, and
Yeah.
um, just kind of a transitional game for him since he wasn't the starter last year. Um, but I digress. My point being, this was like the first big game this year with like all eyes on North Texas, all eyes on Drew Messamaker and Caleb Hawkins, and for 2 quarters, I think we looked on par with them. I think we obviously had some errors that were self-inflicted and ultimately were our demise. That muff punt in the second quarter is going to haunt me for a while, but
Yeah.
overall, man, I mean, I've seen people compare this to La Tech 2018. I don't think that's fair at all.
No.
That this was a really, really good team that beat us. And I think anybody who watched the game in full would not say that, we don't belong where we're at. It's just USF's really good, man. They are a really good team. And just because they happen to get blown out by one of the best teams in the country I don't think there's anything to take away from this other than, okay, we lost, it's a learning lesson. And they responded so well this week against UTSA, and we'll talk about that game next. But that was my big takeaway, was like, okay, if we're going to lose this, I just want to see us bounce back and have the kind of mental fortitude to, especially physically against a team like UTSA that's so, tough physically to play against. I'm not using the word dirty, exclusively not using that word, but they do play tough. They play tough football at UTSA. And that's been a problem for us the last few years. We haven't been able to match that physicality and that strength. And they did on Saturday. They came back and played really, really well. And it's at the point now, obviously we're just one game removed. I'm not going to, get too excited, but if the fates allow that we get another shot at USF in December, at least after 1 week, I'm still, optimistic that my team can hang with them. And they did for 2 quarters. So we don't really have to spend too much time talking about this game, but for 2 quarters, it was really, really fun. The crowd, really just the crowd and the environment was so awesome. And I hope we can get that again against Navy, even though it's an 11 a.m. kick, but I digress. That's not a problem to worry about today, but it was fun. I had fun at the game, and I'm sad we lost, but we have a win since then, so it doesn't hurt as bad.
Yeah. Something that I've heard a lot of people just kind of listening to opposing coaches' press conferences throughout the year is almost all of the opposing coaches that I've heard talk about us heading into the game, they all seem to remark about our team speed. So, it's apparent that we have a fast team. It's apparent when you watch the game, the coaches see it on both sides of the ball. And when you have a fast team, when you have good team speed, if you are good in the trenches, then you're just a complete football team for the most part. Those are such, that's pretty much most of the way there to being a complete team. I thought that our offensive line is solid. Defensive line has had ups and downs, but for the most part they've been pretty good. They've been definitely a big improvement from last year. But this South Florida game was the first game where it really felt like we got whipped in the trenches a little bit. Looked like we got a little bit outmanned. We really struggled to run the ball against them, and I think that really, I think put Drew into those positions where he was pressing a little bit. And like I said before, I mean, teams have been able to run the ball on us, and in this game, this was probably that South Florida game was probably the first game where our offensive line looked like we got beat by the other defensive line in total. The defensive line was struggled, especially with Byron Brown. Like when he kept that ball, he was getting a first down pretty much every time. That was tough. But what I was really proud to see is that after that game where again we struggled to rush, Caleb Hawkins had 15 carries, 59 yards. Just really, like I said, not our best ground game, probably our worst of the year. We bounced back against UTSA, and like you said, we whipped them in a way that we haven't, that we've been outmanned by them in recent years, which is, we were the more physical team. We were able to, really impose our will and run the ball on them. And, we gave up rushing yards, but I thought that our defensive line really did a good job of cranking up the pressure on the pass, against the pass from UTSA. Owen McCown, 11 of 20, 84 yards, 1 touchdown that he got on just a, little flip at the goal line, and, had a few fumbles. Look, Robert Henry had 138 yards. Those were mostly on 2 carries, 2 big ones that he popped. They had rushing yards, but by and large, I thought our defensive line played really well. And obviously offensively, we ran the ball we rushed for 270 yards. So it was a huge day on the ground. Overall, that was the biggest thing that I was really happy to see, is that we not only did we bounce back, but we bounced back in the ways that we need to, which is, hey, maybe our weakness is you can run the ball on us, but we're going to be physical still. We're not going to be a flag football team. We're not going to be a 7-on-7 team. We're going to be a real deal football team that can win just about any game on our schedule. And held UTSA to 329 yards while we racked up 584. That to me was more impressive than the score, because we've talked about it before. Turnovers are awesome. We love turnovers. You forced 3 more. That was huge. Turnovers are not as sustainable as your down to down defense of how many yards per play are you allowing? How much
right
are you preventing the big play? So this was huge in that direction. What did you kind of see there from both sides of the ball?
Just cannot emphasize enough how much I loved that physicality. I'm going to say physicality a lot tonight, but I like watching us play UTSA the last couple of years. I know I already said it, but like the last couple of years, we have not matched up well with them physically at all.
Yeah.
Like they have seemed to have better players and better conditioning, and just like it has looked like a mismatch the last couple of years. And especially in a rivalry, which it is, like, even though they've won whatever 3-4 straight against us, like we're still rivals. We still recruit against each other. Even if you lose, you have to at least be able to match up with them, and we have not the last couple of years. So to see us not only match up with them, but defeat them, and like you said, like yes, we're relying on turnovers all year, but like still being able to force punts once in a while, still being able to at least limit the big plays, which you'd rather not give up a 70 and a 40-yard run to the same running back, but like outside of that, I don't have it in front of me, but his list of runs is like 0, 2, 3, -1. Like he did like it hit 2 explosive plays, and we pretty much limited him entirely outside of those 2. And like that's what they call bend but don't break. You can allow a couple big plays. What matters is how you respond, how you adjust. And that's a really good running back we played this weekend. So defensively, I thought just an amazing effort. We were pressuring their offensive line really well. Couple good sacks for Ethan Day. I went back and watched the game and just was really impressed by the force of our defensive line. Secondary seemed a little bit, locked in after getting burnt last week. They definitely had a much improved game. I know it's easy just to look at the box score and just be like, yeah, we won by, almost 40 points after losing. Hooray. But like, it really is on all 3 facets. Like even, was it Sides who was returning punts and getting a little shifty with it? Yeah. I know I want to say Miles Coleman is a bad punt returner, but he's not like a, world-class kind of highlight type of punt returner. Landon Sides was trying to get a little jukey and make those punt returns a little fun. I don't know that I love that when I'm watching them live, but, I don't know, man. Everything, like the passing was great from Mestamaker. He had a better game. Hawkins was back to, steamrolling dudes, which he didn't really do against USF. Notwithstanding, I know they're a really good team and a really physical defense. So, but he was back to his, I'm going to smash you in the head and pick up 8 yards after contact. It was the ball distribution was awesome, even without Miles Coleman. Just it never really felt like the game was in doubt. Even after that first drive, I was not overreacting. I was just like, okay, well, let's see what the offense does. And they scored on the first drive. They got a field goal, but
it looked like easy, like we were going to be able to move the ball fine.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we look comfortable and not like we had taken a backseat to maybe what some doomers expected us to be after the USF game. It was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we're still a good team. Everybody, like, just take a breath. And final point, this is definitely the biggest win of Morris's tenure. First win over UTSA for him, obviously, big rivalry win. But it's just nice to see that, we finally had a game that really mattered, and, maybe it wasn't as big stakes as USF, but this was an important game for us to win. And the manner in which we handled our business was awesome. I'm not going to say anything scandalous here. The amount of injuries on their defense was a little suspicious. There was definitely some stoppage of tempo, which, you can say was the game plan. I'm not saying anybody did anything, but there were a lot of injuries on defense that, maybe on another day might have disrupted the tempo of the offense, but not Saturday. They responded well. They adapted in game really well. They didn't let a really bad first drive, 70-yard run get in their heads. I think we let them score in the second quarter, another touchdown, but
Yeah.
that was it. I mean,
Yeah,
they gave up one touchdown after that. They didn't hang their heads. The energy was awesome. I was on the sideline with my media pass, and the players were, they didn't have their heads hung. It felt like a group that wanted to respond, and they did.
Yeah.
And especially going into Charlotte now with the chance to go 7-1, that's something you want to see. You want to see the team not let one game get too far into their psyche. And very, very happy with the result.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned injuries for them. There were also some injuries from us going into this game. Miles Coleman was out, and then I think Simeon Evans was out at receiver too. And something that I kind of had wondered in my head and not really said out loud is I felt like I almost wonder if the amount of receivers that we have and like how much we're spreading the ball, I wonder if that almost kind of hurts us as an offense. Like we're too,
sure,
we're not getting enough of that kind of breakout performance because these receivers are getting the ball 1, 2, 3 times a game. Like that's hard to get in a rhythm, and I'm sure they would probably agree with that if they were hooked up to a lie detector. But
it's probably better for like a veer and shoot style offense. Like I don't think we run fast enough to have as wide of a distribution as we do.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with that. And then two guys who've had really good years all season were Wyatt Young and Cameron Dorner. They got to be a little bit more in the spotlight. Wyatt Young, 6 catches, 102 yards, 3 touchdowns, broke that long 42-yard deep ball. That was nice to see because we haven't seen a ton of those deep ball connections this year. Kind of to that point. And then Dorner, another 5 catches, 63 yards, a touchdown. Cam Dorner is one of those guys who I really almost want to see them like almost force feed him the ball a little bit more. Like it seems like he's one of those guys who's like every time they target him, he comes down with the catch. Like he's come down with some really tough contested catches. Sure. And like I said, every time we throw them the ball, it seems like good things happen. So that was good to see him get, a little bit more of a bigger target share than just kind of what they've been used to. And then Wyatt Young, a huge breakout performance. You talked about Luka earlier. Yeah, Maverick fans, we used to call Luka, we used to say he plays like an a-hole. And we loved it how, he was just like, he would just not stop talking and like he's letting teams know while he's dropping 40 on them. Wyatt Young is like that, but
yes,
for receiver, if you look at almost every touchdown he scored, as he's crossing the goal line, he is either looking at a defender and pointing at them or looking for the nearest defender to lock eyes with as he crosses the goal line. and I mean that's
and then goes and celebrates with the crowd. He goes and high fives fans and
no, I mean that's all. Like that's the kind of stuff that you love to see as a fan. Just like love to be on the positive side of that type of interaction with you don't. We saw with South Florida, the dude who was hot dogging it, walking around the goal line before he went in the end zone. Landon Sides didn't like that.
I was in that end zone when that play happened, and there were a couple. That was not the only taunting done in our end zone that night. So yes, very much fun to be on the opposite end for 1 week.
But Landon Sides definitely was able to kind of make the most out of that bigger role. And like I said, I think that was a good thing that we got to get a few receivers more targets instead of trying to spread it around 5 or 6 different receivers. Like it's just hard to get in a rhythm that way. You see the same thing with running back sometimes. Now we're kind of seeing Caleb Hawkins be more the feature back instead of, having 3 guys get, 8-10 carries each. Like, now you're seeing Hawkins used as an all-purpose back, 8 catches, 90 yards, 18 carries, 133 yards. And man, on Drew Mestemaker's touchdown run, the defense just completely sold out for Hawkins, and Mestemaker just walked in while 11 guys tried to tackle Caleb Hawkins up the middle. So that kind of impact is huge. But like you said, Hawkins, Mestemaker, those guys that make the offense run. Now you're starting to see maybe Wyatt Young, maybe Dorner as well, kind of break through as the go-to guys at receiver. I'm sure Coleman will get plenty of looks when he's back in, but like I said, I think it's you're at that time of the season now where, early in the season, you probably let everybody who's had a good fall camp and looks like they can be, a good player. You let them all have a good chance to get the ball and to, get some reps. But now you're getting the season where it's like, all right, this is, now we're making a run for a potential conference championship game appearance. We're making a run for 10, 11 wins or a bowl game. Like now it's time to kind of lock in and say, hey, who are the guys who we really trust to make plays? Let's let them make plays. And
Yeah.
like I said, we saw that really evidently here against UTSA. We'll see if that trend continues against Charlotte. Then, back to the defense. You mentioned it, but Ethan Day and Bryson Hayes also had a sack. Those are our two starting defensive ends. Bryson Hayes had not had a sack all year, and I hadn't really gotten to it, but I did kind of want to mention that, hey, Bryson Hayes, he was kind of getting some preseason pub as like a potential all conference guy. He had a solid year last year for Sam Houston. He 5 games in didn't have a single sack, and he made a nice sack fumble on Owen McCown. He played better overall and actually kind of made his presence felt against UTSA. Like that was huge to see. Ethan Day, that was his first sack since the Western Michigan game. Like that's the kind of performance we need to see out of the defensive line. Kevin Huddleston had a sack. Joshua Pierce had a sack. A couple backup defensive ends. Sadiq Clemens had a good play, the defensive tackle. So you started to see some guys making plays in a way that maybe they hadn't in a while. That's going to be huge going forward because, look, we're not going to blitz a ton. Like that's, so far that seemingly, we're pretty content with bringing 3 or 4 guys on the third down. Can those guys get home? The secondary is pretty solid. If you can get a good pass rush, like now we're really working. And that's what we saw against UTSA. Do you have any other comments or takeaways from this game that you saw on either side of the ball?
No, yeah. We kind of touched on it already, but the ability to limit the runs for Henry was big. Not letting those 2 big gash plays kill you. It's probably a moot point, but on that first big run, Davion Armstead chasing down Henry to stop him from scoring.
Yeah.
Even something small like that is nice to see because so many of these chunk plays we've been prone to giving up the last couple of years. It's just like our guys are 10, 15 yards behind whoever it is scampering into the end zone. So just, it's those little things that like, okay, I know you're chasing down a guy on a 70-yard run, but like the fact that we have athletes out there that can have the mindset and the physicality to do that and still will go out there to make that play and stop a guy from scoring. That little stuff matters, Seeing plays like that is imperative to having a defense that, is not perfect, but kind of like you said, they're not going to blitz a ton, but they're going to let teams run on them a little bit, but they have enough juice in them to make stops where they need to. And even though the worst case happened against South Florida, they game planned really well this week. And by all means, after that first drive, could have just shrunk their shoulders and, doom and gloomed their way into giving up 30, 40 points. And they came out and kicked ass after that first drive. And so, I'm just really, really proud of the effort. I think the coaches deserve a ton of credit this week. And like everybody just seemed to have a cumulative read on UTSA, which was just such a refreshing thing to see. I am not a huge fan of the last 2 wins against them being just complete blowouts. As fun as it is, I would like some more competitiveness in the rivalry because we kicked their ass in 21. Then it was, I guess, 2 or 3 pretty handy beatings between then and now, and then we destroy them again this weekend. So I do miss the old days a decade ago when I was in college, when those UTSA games were scrappy and they were tough, and it didn't matter.
The Mason Fine,
like the Mason Fine years. I think all 3 of those games. Well, no, 2019 we beat them by like 40, but 17 and 18, those were 2 really, really good games. And I'm not saying I am upset with the score. I'm glad we beat them by 40 this year. But I would like some more competitiveness in this rivalry. It's fun to have a rival, and it's fun to like really revel in kicking somebody's butt. And if we're not going to have it against USF, all reliables down south, and now we're back on track to beat them. So, yeah, just overall, I think like I said, all three phases, dude, the Seth Luttrell special, all three phases, all three phases beat UTSA really well yesterday or Saturday.
And should probably make note too that we had a nice little backup quarterback receiver connection there at the end too. Jimerson throwing a touchdown pass, like that was cool to see backups like who have some juice, who can play and score too, not just running out the clock.
I wanted us to hit 50. I wasn't satisfied with the, what was it, 48-14 at that point. I was like, nah, that's not good enough. I want one more. And they were kind enough to supply me with that from some backups. And then we even got Tom Von Groat, who, all due respect, I did not know was on the team. Was not aware he existed prior to Saturday. No disrespect, sir. But he got some action. He liked a couple of my tweets. So, Tom, if you're listening, good job, buddy. Just nice that we were able to substitute in the reserves and still kick their ass. So, that's my final point. It's just, it feels really good to beat a team that we really want to beat. Not to undermine however many 18 some odd wins Eric Morris has here. But not a ton of them are against teams that it's like, oh, that's a really satisfying win. Right. This was a really satisfying win. And now you can go forward with, not only was it satisfying, but now you can go forward with more confidence that, okay, this team can take a punch, but they're going to get back up and they know how to respond. I remember the people want to talk about the La Tech game from 2018. I remember they kind of played like cheeks those next couple weeks. They played, I don't know the scores, but they played UTEP really close the week after losing to La Tech. Mm-hmm. They played Southern Miss was a rain game. I was at that game.
Yeah, but that game was ugly. I mean, it was not. We didn't play well that game until we pulled away late.
That was an ugly game. Yeah. So not to parallel this team with 2018 because that's not fair to this team, but just again, just nice to see that the guys can take a punch, get a hit to their ego, and not let it get in their heads. It's really inspiring for the season going forward. And again, you got to put things in perspective. You're not going 12-0 every year. You're going to lose football games here and there. So especially at North Texas. So how do you respond when you take a punch to the chin? And Saturday was a resounding, awesome, we're getting back up and hitting you right back. So, just makes me excited for the next one. That's all I ask.
Yep. No, I agree. And that next one is the Charlotte 49ers, who are very, very low rated in just about every metric. They're 134th in the country in scoring offense, 117th in scoring defense. And most of the stats kind of in between there are not great either. 1-6. Their one win being against FCS Monmouth, who they beat by one touchdown at home. So 42-35. So, just not a great season for Charlotte. When you have to, like I said, win your one game at home against an FCS team with a touchdown, go ahead touchdown with a minute left in the game. I will say they do seem like they have a little bit of talent at quarterback. Both of their quarterbacks, I think it's Connor Harrell and Grayson Loftus. Both of them are former ACC quarterbacks. Harrell's coming from North Carolina. Loftus came from Duke, and they both actually played at those schools too. So it wasn't, they weren't, full-fledged, like full-year starters or anything like that, but they did get on the field and get some decent experience. So I think that they have a couple quarterbacks, and even Eric Morris kind of remarked about it. Loftus is more of a pocket passer. Connor Harrell is a good passer as well, but has some dual threat capabilities. So I think those are a couple of guys who you don't want to see other than get hot. Even a team like Charlotte on the road, short week. I talked about this at the beginning of the year, but I didn't like how we had to travel to Charlotte on a short week after having a Saturday game. I felt like that was kind of a not great scheduling game, but we knew that the opponent was probably one that you could handle and not make too big a deal of that. But, again, like I said, you don't want to let them get in a rhythm too much and start off sluggish on the road after, a long flight and time zone change and all that. But nonetheless, like I said, just not a good football team right now. It's their first year with head coach. His name is he came from I think he came from Ohio, but sorry, looking up his name real quick. Tim Albin. Yeah, so Tim Albin, he's 60-year-old head coach. He was at Ohio the last 4 years. I think they even won the MAC last year. So he's a good coach. I think that Eric Morris mentioned he's like a kind of a program builder guy. So a guy who probably needs 2-3 years or
Solo
so to probably
podcast.
get this thing.
There's Billy.
Uh-oh.
Did you cut out for like 30 seconds for me?
Oh, whoops. Okay.
Yeah, you cut out after you said nevertheless or nonetheless.
Yeah. Well,
Anyways.
I don't know if you, the listener, will catch. I'll try and figure that out in editing. But regardless, just kind of saying that they're under Coach Tim Albin, came from Ohio. He won the MAC last year. So a pretty good hire for a school like Charlotte to pluck another G5 like conference winning coach. But just probably 2-3 years away from really being competitive. Just don't appear to have the roster right now to hang. What are your impressions going into this one?
I could not agree more on the Albin hire. I think he was a home run for them, and I do think Charlotte is going to be good in a couple of years, but they are not there yet. This is a bad team. I don't think there's any outliers here. They're bad at everything. I don't want to be, rude, but they're not really good at defending the pass or the run. They're not good at passing or running themselves. They lost to a nightmare North Carolina team that is in complete free fall right now. They lost to Rice, who's not very good. South Florida and Temple, South Florida is obviously one of the best teams in the conference, destroyed them. And Temple, who's been kind of surprisingly decent this year, also destroyed them.
Solid.
So, and then they beat Monmouth from FCS by 1 touchdown in a shootout. So, there's not really a ton here. I've gone through their roster. I mean, there's just not anything that they run on either side of the ball that scares me. I think we both kind of talked about it preseason, like you mentioned that, this might be trap game, maybe a little bit. Does not appear to be that way. I don't have any worries going into this one. I think you saw on Saturday that our guys are pissed off that they lost and wanted to, they had something to prove. And my assumption would be that even though they did that on Saturday against UTSA, they feel like they have more to say following that USF game. They really want to probably make a statement and take care of business. And I don't think they're going to overlook Charlotte as kind of weird Friday night ESPN G5 football can get.
Yeah.
This doesn't scream anything to me other than a nice, solid, easy win for North Texas. And again, I do think Charlotte has a really, really good coaching staff and will probably in about 3 years have some really good wins under their belts. And I think Tim Albin's a really good recruiter, and I really like what he did at Ohio. They're clearly not there yet. They do not have the personnel to win right now. And this is a game where you can probably take out Mestamaker and Hawkins and Young and some of the bigger guys probably midway through the third quarter, hopefully. I really don't want this to be a play with our food type game. I don't think it's going to be like a 70-3 type win, but I would very much like us to comfortably have this in the bag probably by halftime up like 28-3, 28-6 type something, and just kind of close it out in the second half. So it's a good week to again, not to disparage Charlotte, but if you're going to have a week where you kind of try some things, and you mentioned kind of being in what are we, week 9 or I guess whatever, just after being 6-1, you like being comfortable and knowing what your options are and having a little bit more assuredness in what works and what doesn't work for your team after 7 games.
Right.
If you're gonna, work any kinks out and try to, test out your depth a little bit more or run some new plays, this is the week to do it. But again, just I don't think this screams trap game, but it's also not a game where you want to play with your food. There's just nothing on Charlotte's side that worries me. They're bad at everything. I mean, I'm just looking through their stats. They are literally in the bottom percentile against rush yards, points scored, pass yards against. They're just bad. Their best metric is defending the pass, where they give up 221 yards a game. That's not good. So it's just they're just not good at anything. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just they're not. And this is probably the worst team in the conference. So you need to go in and beat them by 30, 40 points. What are we, 27 point favorites right now?
Yeah, 26 and a half.
If you're a betting man, I think that's a lock. I would not be very uncomfortable with going way over that, but not giving betting advice on this podcast. We'll be the one sports podcast in America that is untainted by betting and gambling apps. We don't have any sponsors, but I will not be taking any from Prize Picks or Underdog. So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
That's all I got.
You won't hear a MG Gridiron bet code. Sorry to disappoint you.
Hell no. Yeah, that's another thing you can bet on, is that you won't be hearing one of those.
So. No, I think you mentioned that they are not good against the run. Right now, the opponent's rushing yards per game, 245. That's 134th in the country. So, and then on the passing side, their sack percentage is 135th in the country. So they only pick up a sack on 1.31% of dropbacks. So this is a game that the offensive line really needs to lean on them a little bit. Like I said, their defensive line is just not good by any measure. You have to be able to just impose your will, run the ball on them, just get easy rush yard pickups. And keep Mestamaker upright, give him time to dice them up, and I think he will. You mentioned not playing with your food. The worst thing that could happen this game is you throw just a dumb pick six or something, or you get a blown coverage and they give up a 75-yard touchdown pass, and then all of a sudden it's the fourth quarter and you're up by like 7 points or 10 points going into the fourth quarter, and you still have to play out that game, like a real deal game. And then somebody gets hurt, in the fourth quarter of a game that you should have, had in hand well before then. That to me is kind of my concern of just don't let that happen. Don't, like you said, don't play with your food. Be efficient on offense. Do the stuff that you do well, do it well, because this is as good of an opponent to do it well against. This is a unstoppable force meeting a very movable object type situation with our offense going against their defense. Like you have to make it look like that. You can't make any confusion about which team is better. Go out and just do what you do and just impose your will on them early. Don't start slow. I know sometimes after a long plane flight, teams can start off a little bit slow and sluggish. Don't let that happen. Just come out ready to go. Get a good lead, just keep imposing your will on them to make them, just kind of give up throughout the game, so that in the fourth quarter, like you said, you're playing backups, you're running out the clock, and you can worry about getting into that Navy game fully healthy. That's the real, obviously, talk about trap games. You don't want to look ahead too much, but you want to position yourself well for that game because it's going to be huge. Is there anything else here against Charlotte, or maybe even on our side of the ball, from our team, that you're looking at this game in particular?
I do have one thing. It's kind of stupid, but it has irked me all year, which is how bad we are on third downs. Against UTSA, we gave up 4 of 11, which is pretty good. That's fine. That'll win you a football game. But we are still 125th in the country in third down efficiency on defense. Just get off the field. The turnovers are awesome. Picks are fun. Fumbles are fun. I would love a game where we just don't let them do anything on offense. I mean, I don't care if it's stat padding against a bad team. I don't care. Just stat pad. Get off the field. Force punts and shut them down, because there's just they don't have the weaponry on offense. You mentioned their run defense is bad. They don't run the ball well either. Like there's just they don't have an offensive attack that can really threaten our defense. and I just want to see punts. I want to see a lot of punts and a lot of their coaches trying to figure out something else to do because it's not working. That's what I want to see. So yeah, the third downs, not really losing us ball games, but still, it's just something I'd like to see. That's a big red flag on a defense. Is if you're 125th and third downs, it's pretty surprising that team is 6-1. Again, not that it has really a direct correlation to us winning or losing games because our defense has been turning the ball over so much. But yeah, I would like to see.
Yeah, no, that's what's sustainable. Like we always talk about, like you force punts. That's going to translate well throughout the year. Like you said, 125th in third down percentage. That's obviously a big part of that is what you're doing on first and second down. And it feels like we're not doing a good enough job on first and second down. Do that this game. Like I said, I think the defensive line had a really solid game against UTSA. I want to see some more of that. Like who from this defensive line is going to make those flash plays? Last week we had plenty. Let's get some more of that. Guys like Sadiq Clements, who transferred from Louisville, or Kevion Huddleston, who transferred from TCU. Ethan Day obviously came from Wyoming. Like these guys are now more than a half season into their Mean Green career now. They're not new guys anymore. They're not. They have their feet underneath them. Let's see that comfortability play out. Let's see that familiarity with the scheme and just ability to make plays. Let's see that happen. There's going to be, like you said, stat padding. Like there's going to be plenty of chances to make plays on both sides of the ball. Who's going to be the one to step up and do it? I think that's going to be to be seen. But you want to see guys step up to that task. Offensively, I think what I want to see. I talked about really keying in on a few guys. I want to see us continue to run the ball with success with different backs. We didn't really mention it, but Kiefer Sibley came back last week and had a really solid performance against UTSA. Had a big touchdown run on a draw play right before halftime. Had another big run kind of towards the end of the game when, just kind of icing the game out. But, Kiefer Sibley gives a speed dynamic to the backfield that, really helps. Caleb Hawkins wearing down a defense, and then you got a guy like Sibley coming in with his speed. Like that's not a fun combo. And then Mackenzie McGill is still Mackenzie McGill, still, a solid, powerful back. Let's see those guys make plays. I want to see different backs because, on a short week with the flight, Hawkins had a big game last week where he had 18 carries and 8 receptions. That's probably not the best on a body is to, take that many hits, 26 carries and catches combined, and then, flying out to Charlotte on a short week. Let's see the other guys really kind of lighten the load on him and make plays to where, hey, we can. It doesn't matter if we hand the ball to McGill or Sibley or Hawkins. Like we're getting yards, we're making plays, and we're keeping the offense in really solid down and distance situations. So. With that, is there anything else you want to kind of go over before we maybe get into score prediction stuff?
I've been the resident nice guy to the fans on this podcast. I just want to say the crowds have been awesome the last 2 weeks. UTSA was a little light, but still a pretty decent homecoming crowd. But really just as big as the
stepping up.
Students are killing it, dude. Students are doing awesome. I think I don't want to speak out of turn here, but am I correct in saying these are the 2 biggest student attendances we've ever had at DATQ, Apogee, whatever?
Yeah, I don't know, but it definitely seemed like the most, in recent memories, like, pushing 10,000 tickets, like for students. That's crazy.
Yeah. So and we kind of you might've mentioned this on the podcast or somebody mentioned in the group chat or whatever, but like getting the students involved and getting, the kids into North Texas football is arguably more important than appeasing the alumni who are already fans.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be here no matter what. But if you can, like, I've seen TikToks and Instagram reels and whatever, and like there are people like kind of tuning in, being like, oh yeah, we got a football team, and like going to the games and having a really good time at the tailgates. And I think the athletic department has done a really good job of encouraging students to get out there. And I think the students have done a great job of answering. So again, I don't know if any students listen to this. I have no idea, but Again, as I always say, just if you're listening to the students, you guys are doing awesome, and just really happy to see that people are caring and turning out and supporting this team because they deserve it. So I know. Do we want to talk about how much it sucks that we're kicking off against Navy at 11 a.m. on what arguably
Yeah.
maybe probably not, but maybe could end up being even a bigger game than USF when it's all said and
Yeah.
done. Probably won't be, but might be. And it's at 11 a.m. That sucks. That sucks. I'm
I
sorry.
know. It sucks, but I almost felt like I saw that coming because right now where we are, if we have a game on Saturday, the only way we're gonna get eyeballs or perceived eyeballs is by having those really bad kickoff times. Like, we're not on Saturdays, like the primetime hours are for the big boys, and we know that, as much as it sucks. So if you have a game on a Saturday and it is a big game of consequence to the American Conference, which is a really good conference this year, but not, obviously not SEC, not Big Ten. I think that's just kind of the draw right now is, or just kind of the short end of the straw, or the short end of the stick, short straw, drawing the short straw. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
But
Yep.
yeah,
Whatever.
I mean, it's kind of a consequence of our own success. It sucks. Like you said, I'm not gonna be able to make it because of, youth sporting events and stuff like that. And I'm sure, a lot of people are in similar situations. Saturday mornings is just when people have a lot of stuff planned.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that does suck. If you can make it, please do. If you can work your schedules around, yeah, I think that's a great excuse to do it, a game like that. But regardless, I think the stage is setting up where, like you said, that could be just as big of a game, just as big of a consequence to our season. And you win that game, and you're staring right down the eyes of an 11-1 finish, and that would be just, we all would have taken that regardless of conference
Yup.
championship game or college football playoff. We all would have
Yup.
taken that at the beginning of the year. So,
Yup.
but all right, Charlotte, what do you got here for this one?
I will be at East Side Friday night. It's my birthday tomorrow, so gonna go celebrate at East Side and have some beers. I don't really want. I mean, obviously, beating UTSA by 40 was a nice birthday present, but I'd like another one. If I may be so greedy.
Your birthday's in between too, so they both count.
Sure.
You're owed both.
I have family in Charlotte. I really feel bad. I am a Panthers fan myself. I feel for like-minded, suffering Charlotte sports fans. I'm not a Hornets fan, but living in Charlotte's got to suck if you're into sports, because good Lord, there is nothing there. But you're going to have to suck it up for another week, because I've got the North Texas Mean Green. Give me a 52-10 win over the Charlotte Niners. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say they scored 9 for their name. I know they're the 49ers, but they're not scoring 49 points. I'll say 52-9.
Good. I like your not as rounded scores, because mine are always like the most football extra point, field goal, touchdown only score. But I'm gonna say we win North Texas 47-17. I'm gonna say we're gonna get our first safety of the year. We're gonna get nice little non what do you call it? Not uncommon scoring play there, but scorigami maybe. But
ooh,
yeah,
okay.
I'm gonna go with at least a North Texas scorigami. But yeah, 47-17. Yeah, I think this one will be pretty handily won game by the North Texas Mean Green, and just come out of it healthy and ready to go for another huge matchup against Navy next week. So if you listen this far, thank you very much for listening. Glad to have another episode under the books, and go Mean Green.
Go Mean Green.